first thing I wish I knew before I became an accountant. It's such a hard sentence. Okay, so this and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am so excited to have you here with me today. So if this is your first time here, welcome. I am so happy to have you. My name is Rachel and I am a speaker, an author, a business owner, but most importantly for today, I am an accountant. So today I'm going to be talking about things I wish I knew before I became an accountant. So I did quite a bit of research before I decided to become an accountant. I looked at what grades I got at school, I looked at what I was good at, what I was bad at, what my strengths and my weaknesses are, did some personality tests too that tell you what sort of job you should go into. So I did some quite thorough research, and there's actually still quite a few things that either the internet doesn't tell you or that I really wish I knew before I made the decision. Some really positive and some not so positive. So let's get cracking. Okay, so the first thing I wish I knew before I became an accountant is that you do not need a degree to become an accountant. I didn't go to university and I don't have a degree, but I remember when I made the decision to do my accountancy exams and train to be an accountant, I always thought I might be penalised or there might be a glass ceiling because I didn't have a degree, and that is absolutely not the case. If anything, not going to university gave me a really competitive advantage against my peers, because I went straight into a job when I left and finished my A-levels. My peers went off to university for 3 years. By the time they got out and they decided that they wanted to be an accountant, they actually started in the trainee position that I'd started in 3 years ago. So not going to university, I'm actually quite confident I'm going to cover this on some other videos because it's something, A, that I'm really passionate about, but also it's something that a lot of people still don't talk about. It was quite difficult not going to university. It was really hard seeing all of my friends go, and me just having FOMO basically for 3 years. So at the time it was tough, but actually at the end of the 3 years, I was so overwhelmed with just how far ahead I was and how far I'd come. And now, you know, I ran an accountancy practice in my 20s, it definitely gave me a head start. So the first thing I wish I knew before I became an accountant is that you do not need a degree to become an accountant. So the second thing I wish I knew before I became an accountant is that there's lots of different types of accountant. And I remember when I was researching it and like Googling a couple of different things, it's actually really hard to like make sense of it all when you have no idea like what the industry is and all of the different terms. So I actually made another YouTube video recently, I'll link it up here. It's actually called How to Become an Accountant, and it explains the difference between industry and practice. Even within those two categories, industry and practice, industry being that you work in the finance department of a big company, and practice being that you work in a firm of accountants that have lots of different clients. Even within those two, there's lots of different categories. So for example, within practice, there are auditors, there are tax accountants, there are statutory accountants, there are advisory accountants, and there are so many different jobs and different specialities. I certainly found that Googling it is quite terrifying, and one of the things that I would definitely recommend if you've seen all these different types of accountants and you're not really sure what each department does, what it's about, one thing that you can do, and this doesn't matter if you're in a really big firm or a really small firm, is try and get as much exposure to as many different types of accountancy as you can. So when you start as a trainee, you might be a junior accountant or an apprentice accountant. If you're in a really big firm, you could speak to your manager, speak to the HR department, and ask to get as much experience in all of the other departments as possible. And the first reason why this is really good is it will help you understand what you really like and what you're really good at. The second thing that makes this a really good experience is that it is fantastic for networking. So whilst you're going through all of the different departments, you could be spending a couple of days or a week in each different department trying to get experience. You will be networking, you'll be meeting people, you'll be befriending the managers and chatting to people within those teams, so that if at the end of it you decide that that's the department you'd like to work in, you've got the connections to maybe help land you a job. Moving over to the other end of the spectrum, if you would like to get exposure to lots of different things and you work in quite a small firm, even better, because small teams actually deal with a really wide range of queries, whereas in a big firm, the queries would go to really specific people. In a small firm, you're going to be dealing with those queries with the support of your manager. So it doesn't matter if you're part of a really big company or a really small company, you will be able to get exposure to lots of different specialities. So if you love VAT, you love doing VAT returns, you like asking and answering really specific questions from clients on VAT, then get exposure to it. Spend some time doing it, volunteer for stuff, try and do some extracurricular stuff, network with those people, and really find out if you do like it. And then if you do, you've already made the contacts to land yourself a job. Okay, so the third thing I wish I knew before I became an accountant is that it is not just a job for introverts. So I really thought that I was going to be with like-minded people and I was just going to be behind a desk all day, but actually it's not. So if you are a massive introvert, there's definitely certain roles within an accountancy practice that would suit you very well. However, for most trainees that sort of get exposure to lots of different things, quite a big part of our role is speaking to clients, building relationships with clients, doing networking to try and gain new clients. So do not be under any illusions. Firstly, if you're an introvert and you want to come out of your shell a little bit, it can be fantastic. But also, if you're an extrovert and you're actually put off by the fact that you think it's just introverts, don't let it put you off. There is space for you too. Okay, so the fourth thing I wish I knew before I became an accountant is that everybody will think that you are a middle-aged man, and if you are not a middle-aged man, they'll say, "Oh, you don't look like an accountant." Again, in response to that, I would generally say, like, welcome to accountancy, because my entire platform is very pink, full of me wearing dungarees and trying to open up the industry to what I would like it to be. And I think a really big part of this platform and this YouTube channel is I didn't really have anyone to look up to in the industry when I decided to be an accountant for the first time. And this YouTube channel is all about creating a safe place for people to learn and understand just what an amazing job being an accountant is, but also that it's not just one sort of person that is an accountant. It is open to everybody. But I definitely wish I knew that everybody would be expecting me to be a middle-aged man in a suit. Okay, so the next thing I wish I knew before I became an accountant is that it is good money. You can earn some really good money being an accountant. And the reason I say I wish I knew that at the beginning is I had obviously researched salaries, but when you start out and you're an apprentice and you're earning an apprenticeship wage, and even after that, like while you're studying, I certainly found it very frustrating. I started on a very low wage and it was actually quite a long time before my salary changed. And so the first thing is that I wish I kind of always gained and kept perspective of it will pay off, it will be good, you are gaining an amazing qualification, and the salary that you earn at the end of it is good. But I think it's also worth saying at this point that a lot of accountancy practices, certainly the one that I trained at, was very frustrating when it came to wages. And actually in our accountancy practice, we've actually reverse engineered our pay matrix to basically everything that I found frustrating when I was training to be an accountant, I do the opposite of now. So the first thing that I found really frustrating, and this is something that you might encounter, is that it's not transparent pay grades. So I, as someone that didn't have a degree but was a qualified accountant in terms of my exams, I was getting paid quite a lot lower than someone who had done exactly the same amount of accountancy exams as me, but had a degree in geography. So inconsistent pay bandings is something that I always found really frustrating and a bit upsetting. So we actually have completely open pay matrix, completely open banding. So whenever we take on a new member of staff, we show them the pay matrix and we show them how it will work, and so they can understand where they sit and where their colleagues sit too. And I think offering that up from day one really just sets the tone and sets the culture that we are transparent about pay bandings and that we're not going to bring someone in on a higher salary than someone else just because we need the hire. And the second change that we've implemented is actually a pay matrix that goes up on every single exam. So where I worked previously, you would get a pay rise every time you passed a level of exams, so like a group of exams, mostly a year. So you'd have to do a year's worth of exams and then get a pay rise. Again, we don't like that because from an employer's perspective, we really wanted to acknowledge that A, we found it really frustrating, B, it doesn't reward people's hard work very quickly, and C, that our employees' value to us increases with every single exam. And we love that, I think they love that, and it's a really fantastic way of rewarding people quickly for their hard work when they pass an exam. Okay, so the next thing I wish I knew before I became an accountant is how much business experience you get. I sort of had like blinkers on, I think, when I was studying to be an accountant, and just thought like, this is my job, this is my trade, like this is what I'm gonna do. And no one ever told me what you're going to learn, the different modules that you're gonna cover through your training, cover business, accountancy, finance, law, and the pure exposure that you get through the exams, through your experience, is just start to finish business 101. Like, finance is business language. And if you can speak that language, you will understand what makes a successful business. And in our practice alone, we have just hit 225 clients, and they range in bars and pubs and clubs, to hairdressers, to influencers, to boy bands, like to people that sell on Shopify and Etsy. And just having exposure and insight and conversations with and relationships with those businesses just make you an incredible business owner, and they give you a really solid foundation of business. So I really wish someone told me that, like, not only are you becoming an accountant, not only are you gaining this amazing qualification, you're learning a transferable skill. Firstly, like, you could go and do this job in anywhere in the world and any company in the world. But on top of that, you are also gaining the skills to be a really successful entrepreneur. Okay, and the last but definitely not least, and shock, this is hilarious that I've left it till the end. The last thing I wish someone had told me before I became an accountant is about busy season, tax season, whatever you want to call it. It's actually not something that I was particularly aware of before I became an accountant. I think the first thing to say is that it is incredibly stressful. There's a lot of deadlines and there is a lot of pressure, because at the end of the day, we're dealing with people's livelihoods and their business, so there is a lot of pressure, and I think anyone that cares about their job would put a lot of pressure on themselves. But also, within that, there's almost a wider piece of it is very stressful, but as a junior or as someone that's doing exams, you don't have to take that stress yourself. So I would really encourage you to make sure that you're putting all of the appropriate steps in place to not get stressed, and that you are working with an employer that's going to shield you from a lot of that stress. Because as a junior and as someone that's still training, you can only go as fast as you can only do your best, and it's our job as managers and as business owners to encourage you and create an environment where you thrive. So whilst it is a tornado in itself, I would really encourage you to take that with a pinch of salt and to prioritise finding an employer that really promotes a sense of well-being and inclusion when you are looking for a role. But there's a couple of practical things to note about busy season and tax season. I'm aware Obviously in America it'd be really, really different, but in the UK, the personal tax return deadline is the 31st of January. So if you were to go into a personal tax department or a tax department, the 31st of January would be the deadline that you want to watch. And the 31st of March for a lot of companies is their company year end. So for example, it's very, very common for accountants not to be able to take any holiday in January. Like, you just can't book annual leave after Christmas up until the end of January because there's just too much to be done. So I'd say the most important thing that I wish I knew before I became an accountant is just what an incredible career it really is. And it doesn't matter if you're an introvert or an extrovert. It doesn't matter if you have a degree or don't have a degree. Like, this is a career that will financially set you up for life, and from a skills perspective will offer you everything you need to have a wonderful career and then to go on and grow a business if you would like to. So I really hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I really hope it actually helps people make a decision on whether or not you would like to be an accountant. I would love to hear from you. Please, 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 as always, like, comment, and subscribe to this video. It makes the world to me. Every time I get one new subscriber, I do a happy dance. So thank you so much for your support so far, and I'm so excited to see you again soon. Have a great day.